Hey Kai, stop watching TV and come here.
Do you know what day it is today, Kai?
Oh, I don't know. What is it? A boiler?
Really, my little bro? You didn't know today is Native American Day? That's the day for us.
Oh, what's the picture on the wall? Mama, they look like us a little bit. Can you tell me more about them?
Okay, sit nicely and we will tell you about our ancestors, the Native Americans. Many people think that Christopher Columbus and his crew were the first people to live in America. But actually, our ancestors were here long before they arrived. When Columbus saw our ancestors, he named them Indians because he thought that he was in India. However, Native American is the correct term to refer to our ancestors. It is not definitely known how or when our ancestors first settled the Americas, but as a new American parents, we migrated from Eurasia across Beringia, a land bridge that connected Siberia to present-day Alaska during the last glacial period, and then spread southward throughout the Americas over the subsequent generations. At least 3 waves of migrants arrived from the East Asia, with the first occurring at least 15,000 years ago. These migrations may have begun as early as 30,000 years ago and continued to about 10,000 years ago, when the land bridge became submerged by the rising sea level at the onset of the current interglacial.
Wow, Mama, how did they live those days?
Ancestors, the Native Americans, live in both North and South America, including Alaska and Hawaii. There were different tribes and cultures who lived in different parts of the country. A tribe usually consisted of families, communities that spoke the same language and had common beliefs. They also share the same customs and traditions. A tribe has its own types of home food they eat, tools, clothing, and more. The tribes are no different than people across the world today who have their own cultures and customs.
It's very important to know about our origin, Kai. Our ancestors lived in groups of contiguous people who share similar habitats and characteristics. That's the reason why they had a variety of culture, traditions, and languages. I'm telling you some of the larger tribes of Native Americans, which are Iroquois, Cherokee, and Sioux. The Iroquois originally lived near Lake Ontario and along the Mohawk River in New York State. They lived in long houses. These were long rectangular buildings made with wood frames and covered with bark. The Iroquois ate a variety of foods. They grew crops such as corn, beans, and squash. Women generally farmed the fields and cooked the meals, gathered wild food, and prepared on clothing. The men hunted wild animals including deer, rabbit, turkey, bear, and beaver. The Cherokee lived in the southeast part of what is now the United States. The Southeast was a humid, fertile agricultural region. Many of its natives, which were Cherokee, were expert farmers. They grew staple crops like maize, beans, squash, tobacco, and sunflower. In the winter, they lived in houses made of woven sapling, plastered with mud, and roofed with poplar bark. In the summer, they lived in open-air traveling roofs with bark. The Sioux were people of the Red Plains Native American culture group. They lived in tent-like homes called teepees. The teepee was constructed from wooden poles that were covered with durable animal skin such as buffalo hides. The Sioux tribe ate meat from all the animals that they hunted, like buffalo, deer, bear, and wild turkey. Before the arrival of European traders and explorers, the Sioux were settled hunters and farmers. After European contact, they became much more nomadic. Kai, You can find more about other Indian tribes if you want. Now, your grandpa also has something to tell you.
My dear boy, do you know that during the colonial period, Native Americans had a complicated relationship with European settlers? They resisted the efforts of the Europeans to gain more of their land and control through warfare and diplomacy. But problems arose for the Native Americans, which held them back from their goal, including new diseases, the slave trade, and the ever-growing European population in North America. In the 17th century, as European nations scrambled to claim the already occupied land in the New World, some leaders formed alliances with Native American nations to fight foreign powers. The English allied with the Iroquois Confederacy, while the Algonquian-speaking tribes joined forces with the French and the Spanish. The English won the war and claimed all the land east of the Mississippi River. The English allied Native Americans were given part of that land, which they hoped would end European expansion, but unfortunately only delayed it. Native Americans were also vulnerable during the colonial era because they had never been exposed to European diseases like smallpox, so they didn't have any immunity to the disease, as some Europeans did. With the population sick and decreasing, it became more and more difficult to mount an opposition to European expansion. Another aspect of the colonial era that made the Native Americans vulnerable was the slave trade. As a result of the wars between the European nations, Native Americans allied with the losing side were often indentured or enslaved. There were even Native Americans shipped out of colonies like South Carolina into slavery in other places like Canada. These problems that arose for the Native Americans would only get worse in the 19th century, leading to greater confinement and the extermination of Native people. Unfortunately, the colonial era was neither the start nor the end of the long, dark history of the treatment of Native Americans by Europeans and their descendants throughout the United States. Whether through diplomacy, war, or even alliances, Native American efforts to resist European encroachment further into their lands were often unsuccessful in the colonial era.
Our ancestors have been through a lot. Until now, we still suffer from other problems, such as unemployment, poverty, alcoholism, and drug abuse. The government effort to alleviate the problems have sometimes done more harm than good. It is important to note that Native Americans were not fully ratified as U.S. citizens until 1924.
I understand, Papa, but we have come so far from all of that.
Is it true, sis? I want to know more.
Of course, it's true. Many rights secured by our people were won through the efforts of activist groups in the 20th century, such as the American Indian movement. And the most important thing we have achieved is that the 562 federally recognized tribes possess the right to form our own government. And today, new generations like you and me continue to fight to improve the life and culture of our Native American community. And did you guys know? There's an ancient prophecy attributed to Lakota chieftain, Crazy Horse, predict a time of great darkness, and then the coming of the seventh generation, a generation that will entertain the political, economic, and social renewal of the Native American people. And I think it's the truth, because many types of organizations and individuals are rising up to encourage, inspire, and spread a sense of strength in today's Native youth. Like other Native eras, a clothing company describes itself as a collective youth striving to create a vision and voice for 7th generation Native America by reclaiming our traditional knowledge and identity in a rapidly changing world. Our media outlets, like Native Mass Magazine, give a new face and prominence to news about Native figures and Native events. We also have artists like Quang and A Tribe Called Red, who are showing the whole world that what it can look like to be influenced by Native music and are drawing attention to the experience of growing up Native through their music.
Yes, your generation is our hope for a better future. So you and I have to keep on doing the right things and be proud of our values, tradition, and culture. Okay?
Okay, Mama.